just for introduction's sake, when we talk about change, I think it's important to understand that change is one of the most, or should be actually, one of the most constant things in our lives. And there's one reason for that. The purpose of change is improvement or innovation, which eventually results in growth. And why change management is so important is because it becomes a tool with which we can manage the change to get the most benefit out of it. Take out the emotions and take out all the other stuff, so that we can truly benefit from the change instead of experiencing it as something that should bring anxiety or all those things. So thanks, Dave. Over to you.
Great. Okay, guys, what I'm going to cover or try and cover in the next 30 minutes is a change management system that can be anything between, usually it's a 3-day session. We brought it where we got it down to a 1-day session. We then broke it down into a half-day session, and now you guys want me to do it in 30 minutes. So I'm going to go through it fairly quickly. It's going to go point by point. But what I do suggest is that people at some point can always push back, and through me or through Steve, we can always pick up and maybe enlighten a little bit more on various topics, because it is literally, I've cut it right down to try and fit it. It's a lot of slides, but I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. We all happy with that?
Happy with that. Dave, and we
right,
can also
I'm going to go for it.
If we feel that this one session is not enough, we'll bring it into our sessions next year where we can spend like a week on a topic. So we can break it up. Yes, for sure. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah. Great. Okay, then let me go.
Are you sharing your screen? There you go.
We're there, guys. I'm going to try and just shift you guys over a little bit more to the right on my screen. Otherwise, I can't see what the hell I'm doing. Great. Okay, guys. Basically, the system that we use is what's called the ADKAR system. It's created by a crowd called Prosci, who are a United States-based company. But what we're going to look at today, we're going to look at what is change management. What is it all about? We're going to look at change management versus project management. We use versus, but it's actually really change management in conjunction with project management. Explanation of the ADKAR elements. Guys, we're going to try and brainwash you in about 30 minutes so that these 5 letters ADKAR literally become instinctive. Application of the ADKAR model, how it's applied, and the 10 steps to manage resistance. Whenever there's change, there's often resistance, and it can be either in you as an individual, it can be in a handful of people, and it can be across the nation. Goal-orientated management, model guiding, which is individual and organization change. Everybody thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. Good old Leo Tolstoy. Change activity. What are the changes you're facing in your organization or in your life in general? Something worth thinking about, because it's not just organizational change. It's very often what's changing in your life as an individual. Whether it's COVID-19 and the impacts of COVID, there's change. And how much resistance is there to the change? Well, you see it. You see it across the country. Wait until Christmas Day and the boykies are not allowed on the beach. You will see a bit of change activity there. What is change management? It's the process, tools, and techniques to manage the people side of a change. In other words, to achieve the required business results. But obviously, whenever there's a change, whenever there's a new project, at the end of the day, if you don't bring the people on board, your project gets tested. To have a clear vision or most effectively designed solution to a problem will not alone produce successful change. The secret to leading successful change is rooted in something much simpler. Very often I do this where I challenge and I work interactively with the floor. I ask the floor to talk back to me. I'm not going to get you guys to do that today. It's really how to facilitate change in one person. If you can change one person, you can change everybody. But what very often happens is when there's a change, you get resistance to change, and there are 10 common reasons, which is loss of control, interference with autonomy, self-determination within the individual. Remember, we're talking about one person. We're talking about the me factor here. So whether it's a group of, whether it's a national problem, or whether it's you on your own where you decided to go and do a bit of phys ed and training and the likes, it's all about resistance. Excess uncertainty, the devil you know, the sense of safety and belonging. Again, when there's change, people suddenly feel, what's going to happen to me? Most common thing in an organization, in enterprise, leaders spring new ideas without consulting, without bringing it down into the lower levels. Everything seems different. Jolt of sudden process change to routine, a new system, a new technology comes in, a new methodology comes in. Loss of face, change of someone's system or the last version. Maybe somebody introduces something, it's working well, suddenly somebody else comes up with a new system, and suddenly you're feeling a bit sort of that your system has failed. Concerns about competence, can I do it? Fear of obsolescence, obviously shift, takeover, change of company, bring in a new system. Am I going to be obsolete? Am I going to find myself out of a job? Major problem in today's world. More work, often those closest, I don't know why the hell is a T missing off closest there, closest to the change. Change means more work. Maybe a new IP system comes in, maybe a new HR system comes in. Your HR person suddenly is the person that feels overloaded. Ripple effects, disruption effect of change. It can be within your staff, within your customers, within your suppliers. Past resentment, memories of a negative experience or change. Something happened previously, suddenly you got shifted sideways, or somebody else got shifted sideways, you got a negative experience, you remember it. Sometimes the threat is real, true pain, politics, job loss, redundancy, very much a very real factor, goes back to the concern about competence. The critical factor is how your leaders actually handle this resistance to change. And it'll always impact the purpose. And often, if it's not done correctly, if your leaders don't go about managing change,
Dave, something stopped there.
Oh, you're frozen.
often, again, I interact with people. I'm not going to do that today. Current state, where you are now. Guys, are you getting me okay?
Yes, you were offline for a few minutes,
Yes.
but two. So just from organizational change can be represented as 3 states. Just take it from there again.
Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, normally very often I interact with people at this point, but I'm not going to do it again. The 3 states are where you are now as an organization, where you are as an individual, how things are done today. You have a transition state, how we're going to move from current to future, and your future state, how will things be done tomorrow. In reality, each impacted employee has his or her own current and future state, the me factor. Guys, always remember the me factor. As leaders, we've always got to learn and have the ability to say to ourselves, okay, the person or the group of people I'm talking to, can I put myself in their shoes and can I see it from their perspective? And very often that helps us as leaders. The individual also goes through that current state, they go through the transition state, they go through future state. So in other words, the individual is, how do I do my job today, takes it through to future state, and how will I do my job after the change is implemented. The focus of change management is helping individuals make their transition. Remember, guys, I keep focusing on the me factor, on the individual. If you get the individual right, you can get the group right, because each individual is an individual in their own right. There are consequences of not managing the people side of change. Leaders often see between one to all of the following: lower productivity, passive resistance, active resistance, turnover of valued employees, disinterest in the current or future state, arguing about the need for change. Think about these guys. Think about where you've seen it, where you've heard it. People taking sick days or not showing up, just strolling in late to work, being lethargic. Changes are not fully implemented. People finding workarounds. How do we get around the new system? Sorry, guys, I've got a couple of over alert dogs there. People revert to their old ways of doing things. The change is being totally scrapped. Please, Steve, just interrupt me if I'm gabbling too fast or going too quickly. But really what we're doing is just trying to make people aware of what is change management. Divides are created between us and them, a big factor when things change. So in other words, people becoming lost, frazzled, and resulting in resistance. We see it across the country. We see where promises have been made. We see where we're starting to get a country that's got a lot of pushback and quite a bit of rebellion. Primary reasons for applying change management: increase the probability of project success, manage employee resistance to change. Change management is all about that major factor. And then obviously capturing the people-dependent return on the investment, whether that investment be a financial one, time factor, it's getting people focused and getting a return on the input. Build change competency into the organization, or keeping the organization competent and producing. And these are the 5 blocks of ADKAR. Very often when I work with organizations, I often say to the guys, get your maintenance guys to make you these 5 blocks. And it's been amazing how many people have actually done it, because these 5 letters, if you can get these 5 letters right in your life in every direction, and just remember them and remember what they stand for. You know, what do we do? What is the first thing we need to do when change takes place? The first thing we need to do is make people aware of the change and the need for the change. Once you've actually made them aware of the change and how you go about making them aware, my wife's very good at this. She gets me aware of what she thinks needs doing, and then she gets me to think that it's actually my idea, and then she creates the desire, gets the desire for the change to take place. Once we've got people aware, we've got them realizing that our accounting system needs to change, just one simple topic, that we need to go over to a new accounting system and we need to change the accounting department's thinking, we then need to actually give them the knowledge. So knowledge is critical. How we bring that knowledge about. Knowledge is brought about by coaching. And then once we've actually given them that knowledge, we need to give them the ability. Once we create ability so that people realize that they are able, we then go to the next one, which is really what Prosci and ADKAR really drove, which is what they call reinforcement. You'll see they use a registered sign there. I'm not sure that they really could make that apply, because anybody who's good at project management very often subconsciously works with these 5 points. Understanding ADKAR helps to form the foundation of successful organizational change. Ultimately, for a new project or a revised initiative to be successful, individuals in the organization have to do their jobs differently. Again, the me factor, the individual. ADKAR provides a framework for understanding how individuals change. Therefore, managers and project teams are able to use ADKAR. You notice I've underlined project teams. Guys, project management, change management go hand in hand. Guide organizational change management plans, diagnose gaps and root causes of resistance. In other words, a good leader tries to understand where resistance might come from before it comes, and might try to listen to hear, to pick it up when it's starting to happen. Develop corrective actions. How do we divert it? How do we deflect it? If countries were led this way, I think we would have a lot less resistance worldwide. Prosci's organizational change management process. It's a structured process for managing the people side of change. Guys, I'm trying to brainwash. I'm trying to constantly repeat the people side, the people factor, the me factor. As Steve said right at the beginning, so often people forget about the change management process, or they don't go into change management, but they introduce a new project. And there are three phases in the process. There's a more detailed approach to each of these phases, but we're not going to delve into that today. So again, if we take it, we literally probably run over these three phases over a full day period, which is preparing for a change, define your change management. We go over how that's done, how we prepare the team. We talk about a sponsorship model. Sponsorship, very often I find I have to explain to people, sponsorship is not necessarily capital input, it's time input, it's bringing other people in, bringing people in to speak from outside to help understand what that change is about. So what do you need to do to actually bring it about? How do you sponsor it? How do you support it? Change, managing the change. Develop the change management plans. That again is usually your project management side. It takes it across to your company leadership, to your leadership, whether it's you on your own or whether it's two people. Each one of these stages is applicable. Take action and implement those plans. How one goes about reinforcing the change. Collect and analyze feedback. Feedback is critical. Feedback happens when people listen. Diagnose gaps or manage any kind of resistance that's taking place within the team, and implement corrective actions and celebrate successes. And understanding what the why in the change process. What are our change management activities? What should we as leaders be instilling within ourselves? We need to get our communications right. We then need to make sure we get our sponsor and input roadmap. I touched on sponsorship a little while back. Coaching. You're going to see that I'm going to define a difference between coaching and the last item in this list. We'll get to that. Resistance management. How do we manage resistance? How do we manage pushback? And training. Coaching and training are very different aspects, and they're two very different things. And the reason why they're treated very differently within the ADKAR process is that how do we get these individual outcomes? We need to get the 5 points again. Awareness, the desire, we need to create that desire. We need to create the knowledge. We need to give people the ability to actually do the job. And we need to get reinforcement taking back. Now, how do we link these? How do we take our change management activities and take them across to these 5 factors? Well, obviously, we need to communicate awareness. Where else do we need to communicate? We need to communicate from a reinforcement point of view. Now, you'll notice there are 2 lines that come out of that. So the next factor is, where do we get the sponsor? Where do we need to spend time? Where do we need to spend a bit of money? Where do we need to actually get everything going? We need to create awareness. We need to take that sponsor roadmap into getting the desire, getting people to want to do it, to think it's their idea. And then we need to take it through to reinforcement. So again, you see 3 factors attached to how we take sponsorship into those 5 factors. Coaching, remember I said coaching and training are very, very different. Coaching, you need to have a coaching system or coaching methodology to create that awareness. You need to coach to get in desire. You then need to coach to actually give knowledge and provide knowledge. You need to coach to actually give the ability to drive ability, and you're going to coach to get your reinforcement. 5 factors, everything applicable to coaching. Resistance management, the moment you pick up resistance, you've got to take it back to desire. Resistance is all about desire. There is no other line in resistance. Training only goes back to knowledge. You can train the knowledge, you cannot train desire. Training comes into ability. Obviously, you need to train. I can give you all the knowledge in the world how to ride a bicycle, but if I don't give you the ability, don't provide the bicycle to learn on and tell you to ride it, you're going to come short. Successful change requires both the technical and the people side of the aspect. So we look at the technical aspect, who are the technical people, and the people's and the people side of the operation. There's the technical side, is all about the designing, the development, and then to deliver whatever the project is, the change of project. And when I talk about a project change could be a whole new road infrastructure. It could be a whole new leadership style. It could be something as simple as an IT system. I say simple, IT people will tell me not so simple. People side is all about getting them to embrace, to adopt, and to use the new systems. Comparing change management and project management, remember I've said these two have got to mesh, they've got to actually work together, they've got to literally a tongue within each other. Project management, what is the focus on project management? It's the technical side of moving from a current state to a future state. It could be the building of a whole new building infrastructure, a whole new design structure. Let's take it to something that we probably all encounter, where a new building, or we move our offices into a new building, how the building is put up, how it is installed, how it's put up. That's your project management side of things. That's your project guys to take it through. The change management is all about the focus of the people side of taking them from where we are now to how things, what the new future is going to be. COVID-19 is probably something where change management worldwide is taking place. The project process is all about the initiation of the project, the planning of the project, the executing of the project, monitoring and controlling, closing of the project, the end side of it. Anybody involved with project management will understand those processes. Project tools, what is the statement of work that needs to be done? What is the project charter? What is the objective of the change of the project? Why do we need to change our office? Why do we need to move into a different space? Why do we need to now work from home instead of, and how do we go about it? The business case, what is obviously the expected benefit to the business? Work breakdown structure, how do we get it, how do we install it? Budget estimations, what are the cost factors, the resource allocation, and then the schedule of how it's done, and tracking at each point in each stage. But the change process from an organizational perspective is going to be preparing for the change. How do we get people to be aware? How do we get them to have the desire for the change? And how do we go about managing that change? And then constantly reinforcing the change. Individual change model is obviously your tool. Is how do you going to set up a model for it? What is your readiness assessment? What are your communication plans at every stage? How are you going to sponsor? How are you going to go about how much time, effort, capital needs to be put into it? What are your coaching plans? And what are your training plans? Resistance management, obviously, how are we going to do it? How do we anticipate? How are we going to foresee what resistance might happen and then reinforce it? From an individual perspective, what is applicable to each and every individual within your organization, you just provide ADKAR. What is the right amount, and how much is enough? How much time, how much effort, how much do we need to put in? How much project management is needed? How much change management is needed? In both cases, enough is needed to stop excessive disruption, but not overcomplicate the process and resources. In other words, if we overgo the planning, if we overgo the promises factor, if we overgo what we need to do, very often we actually take it back to step one, and we suddenly find that both step one and step two are go out. People do not actually understand where we're going, and as a result, desire gets lost. Integrating change management and project activities. Project management and change management activities are most effective when they are integrated. Remember what I said to you, when they meshed, when they fingered together. You take that little picture tells you a lot. There's a whole lot of thing about design on a road and how a road might be put out and what the expectations are, what the driver's expectations are, what the vehicle's capabilities are. But very often the planning and the actual project management of what is happening doesn't include the actual, doesn't bring in change management at the time. It's actually only brought out when obstacles arrive, resulting in problems nobody planned for, the icy road top and how to handle it. Integrating change management and project management activities should be, and we look at a very simple ADKAR model there. You look at the awareness and the awareness taken through to enforcement on the graph, and literally at each stage, if you look at the logic of when you're driving a project, if you've got your employees functioning and with all the 5 factors of ADKAR, each and every stage, that graph just continues on a steady incline, and you will arrive at a successful change. Any glitch at any point, obviously reinforcement takes it back. So you'll see reinforcement slightly sitting outside of the graph there. Organizations don't change, it's people within the organizations that change. Maybe it's a new strategy, maybe it's productivity improvement initiative, maybe it's a new invoice system, maybe it's mergers and acquisitions. I'm seeing it right now with a company, a very large company that's just been taken over by new ownership, and we're trying to get the new staff, the new leadership involved with the old leadership, and the ADKAR is very, very applicable. A new product, maybe you bring in a new line, something new, it's going to be disruptive. Remember, right in the early stages, it could affect your customer systems, it could affect how you pack a particular product. Maybe suddenly you've got a different marketing approach because you're now going to go into maybe some of the big chains, somebody like Woolworths. You've been used to packing for one of the vegetable wholesale organizations, whereas taking on something like Woolworths, very different approach. Maybe you've got an updated or changed IT system, maybe the methodology of record keeping, record taking. IT systems may be going hand in hand with your invoice systems. And then your focus on the customer, maybe you shift your focus. You've gone from selling to street vendors to going to the super chains. What is the effect? Maybe you're online, maybe you bring on a new HR benefit system or an HR change in systems. All results in the fact that people are quite happy to hold on to the old things. How do you actually get them to handle the pressures of the different changes? Any business change requires individuals to do their jobs differently to be successful. To get that difference, you need to get them desiring the change. The individual perspective, the secret to successful change lies beyond the visible and busy activities that surround change. Successful change at its core is rooted in something much simpler. How to facilitate one change in one person. Guys, if we can change one person, we can change a team. We can change everybody. We can actually get our teams performing. And we'll get on to what makes a good team. You cannot manage change at an organizational level until you know how to manage change within that single individual. If you can't change an individual, how the hell are you going to change a country? It's that old story of you have an old system, maybe you've got an old order system, order taking methodology where everything's done manually, ticking it off on a page. Suddenly something new comes in, it's all linked, your orders linked back to through your IT system, back to your invoicing system, and you've now got to get the actual mental capacity, and suddenly when these new priorities change, the confident individual ends up being full of questions and unsure and insecure. So we go back to those 5 building blocks for successful change. I won't do to you guys what I always do to everybody else. I ask them to give it to me, and amazing how many people will sit and look at me when they don't remember what A stands for. Awareness. What is the change? What is the nature of the change? Making people aware. Where are we going? Why do we need this change? Why is the change needed? And what is the risk of not changing? What is the risk for the individual? What is the risk for the organization? What is the risk for the team? Risk management in this aspect is pretty critical. Change involves personal decisions, so it's all about desire, getting people to understand what's in it for me. Why do I need to change? Why must I go along with the change? And if we don't get this right, they maybe people tend to start to see what's not in it for them. How are they threatened? Remember the 10 points that we spoke about earlier to do with resistance. Get it to become a personal choice, something my wife's very good at, making me believe it's my idea. A decision to engage and participate. If the desire's there, people are eager and keen. I've seen it within a very big organization where we had a operations manager who was extremely abrasive in his approach, and we eventually made a shift, we made a change, and suddenly the desire by everybody to engage has resulted in incredible teamwork. Knowledge, knowing how. You'll be amazed how many people, when I show this, even though I have requires knowing how, that I come up with a K, that they don't remember the knowledge factor. Understanding how to change. If we don't understand how to change, it's going to crumble our desire, and it's going to crumble how aware we are of the need for the change. Training on new processes and tools needs to take place. Learning new skills. Remember, knowledge goes to literally every aspect. Change requires action in the right direction, and if you're going to get that action right, you've got to get ability, the demonstrated capability to implement the change with the right tools. Give people the right tools, whether those tools be access to a readily available information source, training schedules, training systems, the physical tools themselves that need to be utilized, achievement of the desired change in performance or behavior. Change must be reinforced to be sustained. Reinforcement, actions that increase the likelihood that a change will be continued, evaluate, listen, and take back where needed. A critical factor that we as leaders often fail with, and we rather speak than listen. Recognition and rewards that sustain the change. Going back to that actions that increase the likelihood. I'm sure you guys see it. I'm sure you see it with some individuals within the huge group. How many people talk and how many people don't actually listen to what is actually wanted or needed. Recognition and rewards that sustain the change. Without awareness of taking the two together, without awareness and desire, you're going to see employees asking the same questions over and over. Lower productivity and higher turnover of staff, losing good staff, losing guys that actually, because they don't understand or they feel threatened by the change, you lose them. Hoarding of resources and information, something we're really bad at here in South Africa, is that people will very often hold on to information for fear of getting those around them onto the same level, or if not better than they are. A good leader really tries to train and encourage people around them to be better than they are. One of Okay. Without awareness and desire, you're going to see employees asking the same questions over and over. Lower productivity. I'm not sure at what stage I lost you here. Hoarding of resources and information, something we're bad at in South Africa. I think I had already covered that. and delays in implementation. I think maybe it faded out because I mentioned Nelson's name there. I'm not sure. Without knowledge and ability, you will see lower utilization or incorrect usage of new systems. Employees worry whether they can be successful in the future. Very often, again, it's that stability. It's that when we have a change, what is the effect? If we're not listening to our guys on the ground, we go back to this old factor and we end up where we lose staff who are too scared to ask us, too scared to talk, or they start to feel threatened. I've seen that within a very large organization just recently. Greater impact on customers and partners. Obviously, if the customers are not understanding what the change is, you've now started to deal with the big super chains, and your vendors on the street now feel that they're insignificant, they bail out. But actually, when you really look at it, the new customers stand for 30% of your turnover and your vendors stand for 70%. You can't afford to lose them. Sustained reduction in productivity. Without reinforcement, you're going to see employees revert back to old ways of doing work. Ultimate utilization is less than anticipated. The organization creates a history of poorly managed change. Expected ROI is not achieved or project fails. I'm going to go back one step there. The organization creates a history of poorly managed change. Once we as an organization or as an individual get a reputation for not seeing something through or not actually getting it to work, we end up, or it results in us having teams that are failing because teams don't believe that it's going to succeed because we have a history, we have that reputation. When you create awareness, you're going to hear I understand why. If you get desire right, you're going to get I have decided to. You're going to get knowledge right. You suddenly have everybody saying they know how. And if you give them the ability, they are able to. Guys, those 4 factors, those 4 points, so often when we do something, introduce something new, if we go through each of those with every single one of our people at every single level, you'll be amazed at how easy transition takes place, how easily transition happens. Reinforcement, I will continue to. Now, how we go about reinforcement, we've got a whole lot of factors that are utilized to implement that. Organizational change is successful when everyone who is impacted by the change. Remember, everyone at every level, your guy standing at the gate on guard duty, your person making your coffee during the day, the person sweeping the floors, how are they impacted? What are they aware? How are they aware? How are we going to keep attitude right? So often attitude failure, we hear it in South Africa all the time. We talk about attitude. 9 times out of 10, attitude is brought about due to a lack of the ADKAR points. 5 levers for organizational change management. Remember, communication, the sponsorship, the coaching, the training, and resistance management. Resistance management is a major factor. Using the right tools, you can move the organization through ADKAR. You can't train desire. You can't communicate ability. Remember earlier where we talked about riding a bicycle. I can't communicate the ability to ride a bicycle and tell you to ride it. You're not going to succeed. Why are these activities for managing change important? I've taken a whole fat bunch of slides out here and I'm trying to compact it into the me factor. What is the awareness? If you're not aware of the need to change, you might respond, this is a waste of time. It was working just fine before. They never tell us what's going on. But if you're made aware of the need for change, how soon will this happen? How will this impact me? Will I receive new training? Me questions gained on desire. Everyone, even if you are made aware of the need for change, you might resist by saying, I'm not interested in changing. What's in it for me to change? I doubt they're really serious about this change. Remember the old reputation factor. With resistance, you could find yourself labeled difficult, inflexible, pessimistic and unsupportive or not fitting in, not being part of the team, not being the team player. With knowledge, once you know why and you're aware and have the wish, the desire for the need to change, you want to know how to make the change. You need to be prepared for the change. You need to embrace why you need to understand the change. With awareness and desire, make the most of the training investment that is made in you. Knowledge is strength in job security. Better knowledge makes you of greater value personally within the organization. You'll notice at these stages, I'm talking as though I'm talking to the individual, because again, we do these presentations and we do them not management, we actually take it into the lower levels, where if the lower levels understand the need for ADKAR, they're going to ask for it, they're going to want it. But if they start to understand where they themselves might fail at each point, this session, these points actually help. With the knowledge you now have, you need the ability to use it. Find yourself asking, saying, I'm not getting these new steps right. I eventually get there, but it takes me twice as long. I understand the instructions, but when I have to do it, I freeze. I'm sure every one of us have encountered each of these. You need to be helped to bridge the knowledge to ability gap. Accept and follow coaching guidance and advice. Coaching does not have to be formal, but hands-on guidance. You could make mistakes. Don't hide, communicate them upward to get further coaching, training, and advice to reach perfection. The subconscious mind is psychologically linked to habit, and you might find yourself saying, like, the new way takes too long, I'm going to do it my own way. How many of us are guilty of that? I keep forgetting to include the new department. I'm going to use the old paper method. I do not grasp the technology. These factors might result in workarounds, resulting in need for more training or coaching, a better understanding of why the change is vital. Without communicating upward, disciplinary action could result. In other words, if you as the individual on the ground don't communicate these hassle factors upwards, you could pay a price. You could be taken back through each stage to get the desire in place. Not everyone changes at the same pace. It's a pretty logical diagram, that, but so often we as leaders don't do that. We look at person A and then we compare them to person I, and person I takes a hang of a long time to start to even get to be aware. Once they've got the awareness right, they get the desire very quickly, take a little bit of time on knowledge, ability is quick. Each of the different stages pretty practical, but if we understand the individuals, hence the fact that we say take ADKAR through to each individual. Resistance to change is normal. We all tend to push back at change. We should anticipate it. We got to anticipate that we're going to get the finger at some point. This is the D, the desire component, and we need to manage it. These are the 10 steps to manage resistance to change. The 10 following steps are pretty critical. The individual needs to understand them, but management needs to understand these 10 steps, probably to the greatest. Listen, the critical step any manager should take when creating desire to change is to listen. Every leader should listen. I saw it when in the army we had a subby, a second lieutenant that came in, and he actually came in and he turned to his troops and he turned to his guys and said, talk to me about how you do things, how you go about things. And senior officers actually gave him stick on it. He said to him, listen, you're the leader, you tell them what to do. And he said, yeah, sure, but they're the guys with the experience. In many cases, employees simply want to be heard and to voice their objections. So sometimes once somebody's had their whinge, they're happy and they'll actually go along with you. Understanding these objections can often provide a clear path towards resolution. Listening can help managers identify misunderstandings about the change, a critical factor. So often our staff don't understand us, or they misunderstand where we're going with it. Our population misunderstands us as national leaders. Focus on the what and let go of the how. This is a difficult one for leaders very often, is don't worry about how to do it. We need to get a focus on what needs to change. Once people have got the understanding of what needs to change, they want to know how, and the how is easy. This process transfers ownership of the solution to the employees, to the individuals. Employee involvement and ownership naturally builds desire to support the change. Remove barriers. Barriers may relate to family, personal issues, physical limitations. Again, know your people, know the guys under you. What are they? Who are they? What are their family challenges? What are they? What's happened within their families? Where are they stand? Maybe they've got money problems. Maybe they've got some kind of. But if you don't listen and don't fully understand the individual situation, how are you going to communicate at any point? What may appear to be resistance or objection to the change may be disguised barriers that the employee cannot see past. You have the employee, you have somebody who's being abused on the home front and they bring it back with them to work. But if you're starting to understand the individual, you can help them get past those barriers, identify the barriers clearly, determine ways that the business may be able to address the barriers. In other words, we fail as leaders. We so often we have the attitude of, guys, we've got a job of work to do, and your problems. Don't bring them with you into the work environment. But if you don't understand the problems of the individual, they become barriers. Provide simple, clear choices and consequences. Building desire is ultimately about choice, and I love the choice factor. We see it. You guys see it come up with projects that come on the huge front. Where do we want to be, and is the choice that we are making taking us towards where we want to be, or is it taking us away from it? Managers can facilitate this process by being clear about the choices employees have during the change. And the clarity of that is quite a critical factor. Communicate on simple and clear terms what the choices and the consequences, I probably should underline consequences, are for each employee. By providing simple and clear choices along with the consequences of these choices, you can put the ownership and control back into the hands of the employees. So in other words, if the employee gets all of this clear, they actually take ownership. They take ownership of the new change. Create hope. How did the ANC get all its votes? They created hope, and many people respond to the opportunity for a better future. Managers can create desire to change by sharing their passion for change and by creating excitement and enthusiasm. We see that politicians are good with it. People will follow a leader that can create hope and whom they respect and trust. Respect and trust, critical factor. It's the example we as leaders set. And how do we win? I referred to that subby, that second lieutenant earlier. And by him actually communicating with his guys on the ground, they knew that he understood them. And as a result, they grew to respect and to trust him. And at the end of the day, that subby was literally our best guy. He had the best results. Show the benefits in a real and tangible way. For some employees, seeing is believing. Demonstrate the benefits of change in a real and tangible way. Share case studies. Give them examples of where that change, maybe other organizations, why have we brought this change about. Invite guests to provide personal testimonials of how that change affected them, how it improved them. Visibly demonstrate the success of pilot programs or trials. And again, the guys, this can apply to a large organization, or it can apply to you as individuals. It can apply within a home environment. Make a personal appeal. A personal appeal works best in honest, open relationships where there's a high degree of trust and respect. Now, remember, I referred to that trust factor earlier. Now, imagine if you've got people beneath you that are pretty suspicious of you as an individual, suspicious of you as a leader. Are you going to lead them into an ambush somewhere along the way? And what's going to happen when you say, I believe in this change? You're going to get that, yeah, I'm going to follow you, or it's important to me. Your problem, I'm not interested. I don't respect you. Why should I? Why? If it's important to you, why should I support you? Why should I give you my support? You would be helping me in making this change work, or even worse. So again, guys, trust, leadership, respect all go hand in hand. Convert the strongest dissenters. Managers can use special interventions to convert strong and vocal dissenters. We took the biggest rebel that we ever had and converted him, made him a leader, and all of a sudden that dissenter suddenly became the strongest advocate, and they became equally vocal in their support as they were in their resistance. And suddenly, because they knew all the gaps and the spaces, they actually became one of our best leaders. Demonstrate consequences. Number 9, this factor, this is critical, and it's critical for managers to understand this, and it's critical for guys at every level, because often removing a key manager or leader who is demonstrating resistance to change sends a powerful signal to the organization as a whole. We did that in a massive organization, and when you can't change the people, you change the people. Does that make sense? Does anybody not understand what I'm talking about when I say that? This is something Director at Eskom goes by, and he says, if I can't change you, I'm going to change you. In other words, if I can't get your mental space right, I'm physically going to replace you. The message becomes, they are serious about this change. The resistance will not be tolerated, and the consequences for not moving ahead with the organization are real and severe. We bring in this last point very often, where with staff at lower levels, but it's applicable to everybody at every level. It's usually used with caution, but it's used with involvement of HR and all the correct legal guidance. Again, Andre de Ruyter's little comment here, nothing concentrates the mind like the prospect of a hanging in a fortnight. In other words, if you've got leadership that are not towing line, and they realize or have had that example of the first point there brought to them, very often change happens, and it's the toughest part of change. Provide incentives, used mainly with mid-level or senior management, not necessarily. It can also involve guys at lower levels. Increase their compensation or create a bonus program such that they are directly rewarded for the successful completion of the change. Offer a promotion to a position they desire, set goals and target based on choices and methodology. I've seen somebody who worked literally in the lower levels as a scout on the ground within a greenhouse operation. And when we got to understand the individual and dangled the carrot, eventually they suddenly went from a lethargic but bright individual at ground level to being the second most senior supervisor on their teams. Conclusions, change management and project management are both tools that support the project benefit realization. Project management is the technical side and change management is the people side. Change management is most effective when it's launched at the beginning of a project and integrated into the project activities. In other words, don't wait until the cars collide to realize that an icy top is not a good idea. 5 elements of ADKAR. Guys, if you've got those 5 at every point in your life, whether it's the fact that you've been sitting at home under lockdown, realize that your awareness is that you're putting on weight, you need to get a bit of exercise. So the desire factor comes in, you need to know how to exercise, you need to have the home gym maybe, and then you need to constantly reinforce yourself because your decision to exercise suddenly gets challenged at times. These were the 10 steps for managing resistance. This is the desire component of ADKAR, which is really what ADKAR is all about. Desire in conjunction with trust equals greater project success rates. ADKAR equals change management success. So why are some teams terribly bad? I'm now going to ask you guys. I'm like at the end right now, but I want somebody to say to me, how come some teams are terribly bad? And this answer comes from as a very senior SEALs instructor in the military, in the United States military, very successful guy. He's worked as an instructor. He works as a motivational speaker. I'm not getting anybody making comments. So here's your answer. There are no bad teams, only bad leaders. Okay, that's what it's all about. If leaders understand ADKAR, they become brilliant leaders. Jocko Willink, top US SEALs operative. He's written some brilliant books. He's great. He's a really great guy. To read his military approach to the day-to-day leadership, and we see it. We see senior officers that come out of the military world that end up holding very senior jobs in companies, and that's why. Any questions? Anybody got any questions, or have I kind of sort of burnt you out with too much run here?
Quick questions, please.
Yes, Sylvester.
David Yates, that's quite an amazing presentation, sir. Thank you very much. Just a quick question right there in terms of process of change and process of leadership, especially when you talk about reinforcement. What do you do to the individual that is that could be resourceful in an organization, but he has a tendency to cause division and gossip and lies and things like that? How, especially after you talk to the individual twice and three times, and they continually do that, causing divisions and all of that. What's the best way to handle such?
Very, very often that type of individual might need to lead to the next stage, which gets to where if he's not hearing you and he's not picking up, you might need to warn him, but you might also need to dangle that carrot of him towing line, and as a result of him towing line, he can actually grow himself into a better position. And I enjoy the fact that you've asked that question, because I made a very slight reference to it there when I talked about offering promotion. We worked with colored soldiers quite a bit. I'm talking up in the Rhodesia days. And we had a colored soldier that was like the rebel in the unit. This guy spent more time in detention barracks than he ever did in the unit. And one of the leaders sarcastically said, if we don't do something with this guy, we're never going to get rid of him, because detention time just gets added on to your military time. And what we did was we actually took him and gave him an instant promotion. We did something unheard of. We took him where we put 3 stripes. We made him a sergeant, gave him a leadership role. And suddenly this guy who rebelled, who was the guy that undid any idea that anybody else came with, he suddenly became the best performer. He ended up with the best platoon. He ended up with the most magic guys under him. So again, it's look at the individual, look at where the individual's strong potential is, because very often when you've got that negative factor, it's an insecurity in the individual, and you need to understand that insecurity and how do we build and grow him out of that insecurity to actually realize his own worth. Does that make sense to you?
Amen. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Dave, can I just ask you to stop share your screen so that we can have the faces on video too? Otherwise, it's got that on video. Dave.
Okay, I'm going to do that. I will get out of it. How am I stopping?
Okay, it's stopped.
Are we good?
Yes, we're good. We're on. Okay, any other questions or comments or stuff? I see Mark's got his hand up. Mark?
Oh, morning, guys. David, thank you very much for that. Very comprehensive. I think that the one thing that stood out for me is that clear relationship and yet differences between project management and change management. And I think the clear point being made that a project management moves from a technical state of being to a future state versus the change management, which deals from the people's point of view, which is the complex mixture of perception and perception that an individual has, where they need to then have and awaken that ADKAR state. So I think for me, that was something that really comes out here. And I think within particularly the startup space, but also within companies that have gone through disruption, as you referred to COVID, that balance and difference between recognizing the project goals based on business factors, targets, goals, bottom lines, that are all necessary for the corporate and the business animal. And yet it's people that build things and it's people that can destroy things. So I think that's a very key part here, is that often business parties who have been through experienced business cycles or indeed project management roles try to drive change within a project, and what seems obvious to certain people is not obvious to those that haven't been there before. And I think that's what leads to your ongoing points about leadership, is that leadership needs to always try and lead from the perspective of the whole and the individuals and the others. I like Sylvester's point that often one individual can actually affect the perception of the greater number. So yeah, for me, thank you. I think that a clear difference between project management and change management being one a technical state versus a people's state, and moving them to two different places. So thank you.
Good.
Hi, David. David, it reminds me, I was going to raise it earlier on when I did it, when I heard you were going to do your talk. I was involved in both two options on both sides. One was management by objectives was introduced. Remember Dr. Drucker, he actually introduced management by objectives for management decades ago. And our company, which was the Argus Group, then the largest English language newspaper group in Africa, the Rhodesian Herald, in fact, was one of their newspapers. So one of the issues that we had was people didn't accept what management by objectives was all about. And I can see now where the issues and the faults that the management who forced it down onto the lower levels made mistakes. The other side of it, I was lucky enough to be introduced to management by management information systems, which was the Optimus management information system for the printing industry. And again, I was more by luck than by good judgment. I introduced it into our own company, and we were able to list that company on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange because we became so successful at using the systems. So technology, actually, we were able to bring people along the line, you know, by training them to use the systems. And people would come and ask me, what do I do now? And I'd say, ask Optimus. And everything, we forced them to go back to the system because the system was real time and linked to every department, right down from estimating all the way down to the financials and the accountants. And even I actually coined the word dashboard because I said to people, would you buy a motor car without a dashboard? And I used that. I said, well, why do we run our business without a dashboard? So we used a real-time dashboard which showed your pipeline and your sales and your profitability, even added value. So I've seen both sides of that coin, and it is quite amazing. What came out was the one thing about, and luckily you handled it. I used to say the same with dog training. There are no bad dogs. There are just bad owners. So it's very much the same here. There are no bad individuals, because again, we had that same resistance to change when I introduced management information systems where we were measuring every minute and every gram throughout the printing operation. And that involved people like designers. I used to walk into the design department and people would be sitting, staring out the window. And I'd say to them, what are you doing, Laurie? Laurie Hall was an amazing artist. And I mean, literally, not only a graphic artist, but a proper artist. He drew, he painted. And he said, I'm thinking. I said, well, thinking costs money. Would you please clock in? And it's amazing how guys, I said, you know, you've quoted me 10 hours or 20 hours to do an annual report. If it goes to 45 hours, who do you think is going to pay those extra 5 hours? And I said, I'm going to pay them. So Laurie then suddenly realized that you can't just sit around and, you know, and not understand that time is money. So I am absolutely amazed that they've, you know, brought everything together into a management system like ADKAR.
ADKAR. But George, George, it's those 5 letters, and it's amazing how it's worked. We've seen big teams work. I've seen a big organization where they literally did. They got their maintenance team to cut and make the 5 blocks. And the question to people is, where are you in those 5 blocks? How do you sit? Am I needing to reinforce, or am I needing to help you with your ability? Am I needing to help you with your knowledge? Is there something you're missing, or are you finding it hard? Do I need to help you get the desire right? And it's no matter which direction you take it or whether you pick it up in the middle, it's an incredible management tool about leadership. And we've also got to remember where we say there are no bad teams, there are only bad leaders, but leaders have leaders. So it goes all the way up till eventually, if you've got a really bad company, maybe it's your MD, maybe it's your CEO, maybe it's something going wrong at the top. And yeah, we've all personally experienced it with a country that's been brought into a tough situation.
I just want to, from a project management perspective, and this is what I've experienced where this process has helped me quite a bit. In the latter years of my involvement with big construction projects, it was always with delinquent projects, and I realized that it is mostly the relationships within the team that is causing the project to fail, or that on the verge of failing. And I always employed the ADKAR process in working just on the relationships. That's all I did. No other change. I just changed the way in which people started to see one another, how they acted towards one another, how they started to realize that awareness thing, how they actually need the other person to be able to fulfill his role to the best of his ability, so that he can or she can actually fulfill their role to the best of their ability. And once I understand that, the teams just pull together, and the project has always been a success. So and in that, there's two things for me: the relationship, and then honesty. Guys, when you need to bring change in, make sure that you convey whatever information is, that when you create that awareness, that you convey it with brutal honesty. Because if you lie to people, you're going to lose them emotionally, whatever. Some people try to impress you with the technical knowledge on the change that has to happen, but in the meanwhile, they're just trying to convince themselves that change is necessary because of that, and it's not always that. Change may be required because of something else. So we need to make sure that when we do this, if you don't know why that change is actually have to happen, and this is many times your mid-management and the leaders below you that is bringing the change about, that has a misconception as to the why. And then they won't come back to you. They will not be honest with themselves, first of all, because that's important, to say that I don't understand or I don't know. And it takes courage for us to realize, even if I am in a senior leadership position, to say, dude, I'm not sure what it is that you're trying to tell me, or I don't understand, or I don't know, and ask for help in those areas. Because without that honesty with yourself and with others, just change won't happen. And that is when you may be changed. To come back.
Now, Steve, I've seen it. I've seen it with teams when guys come to me with a team and they say, oh, I'm really struggling with my team. I just can't get my team to get it right. We're just not getting the performance. We're not getting it done in time and on time. And my first question to him, I say to him, well, you're obviously not listening to your team.
Yeah.
They're trying to tell you something. There's something they're not with. So which of those points is your team missing out on? And very often when you get that across to an individual, you suddenly create a leader. There's no such thing as an individual that cannot be a leader. Everybody can lead. It's how you train the leader to lead. And I believe these 5 ADKAR points are there. Whether it's applicable to us in our day-to-day relationships, it can be in our personal lives. ADKAR is applicable.
Yeah, for sure. Sheila?
Just a question, I've run a couple of studios and I've been in charge of people under me. But the last one was when I actually employed people, had my own business and employed somebody. And my thing is, we're living in a society where you want to be people's friends too. You know, you want to be your employees, you want to have a good relationship with them. So you don't just want to be the boss, or you don't. And the problem is you get to a point when you're too friendly with them. And then eventually it's almost like they don't take anything seriously. Like, for instance, I employed somebody that kept going on their phone the whole time. Like, they'd be working, and just like George was saying, we charge by hour. And I mean, we've got to keep a log, you know, of, so when a client's when we're working on a job, they've got a little logbook, and they've got to log it in so that we can charge the client. And I'd find this person was like, while they're working, they were like sitting there scrolling, reading Facebook posts, and then replying. And I'm like, and then how do you tell? Because like I said to you a couple of times, I said, please, you know, we're charging per hour. You have to put this away. You know, you can't do this. Like, I'm charging people, and you're wasting their time and money. And then how do I know what percentage of that time were you texting? And so I even said to them, you know, you're welcome to do it during break time, you know, whatever. At one point, I had to ask her to put her cell phone somewhere, you know, away from her. My thing is that it creates such a dynamic, like to still try, because you're like doomed if you do, doomed if you don't, kind of thing. Like, you want to be there for them, you want to be part of their lives, because like you say, there's so much that influences an employee, what's going on in their personal life, where their brains at, because job is something they got to do, but they humans with feelings and emotions, and they react to things around them, you know. And where do you like sort of draw the balance between being sensitive to where they're at and what they need to achieve, you know? So David, I just want to ask another question, because added to this one, you know, to this
Yeah,
what
sure.
I've just explained to you, you know, you can still maintain friendships with them. I mean, I'm still best friends, I'm good friends with this person, you know, even after quite a challenging, you know, but that is the key. Like, I know, because like lovingly, you know, because they sometimes you lovingly, and you, I mean, I'd give her lots of opportunities, whatever, but you get to a point in where you, like you said, you know, when something's not going to change, you got to change the situation, you know. And so, yeah, so my question is it always that eventually you just give up and say, you know, well, I can't. And even if you do give them more responsibility, because well, another instance, when I was running a studio, and a new girl came in from one of these, so like we old school, so the old school used to work their butts off. Like, we used to do letraset cutouts, and then we used to stick and paste stuff on, you know, we did everything. We scanned, we conceptualized, we designed, we're the old school. And then now these youngsters go to Baker, they do we build ourselves up to be art directors. We didn't start off studying to be an art director. We started at scratch, you know, the tough way. We work through nights, not sleeping, and, you know, crazy times. We just get a shower, then you got to come back, because like George was saying, there's an annual report deadline, and, you know, the accountants are looking at it at night, and you're sitting up with them making changes, and then the next morning it has to go to print. And so it's like a crazy thing. But some guys just walk in there and say, well, you know what, I'm not going to work overtime tonight. Sorry, I'm shahiling at this time, you know, nobody's giving me overtime pay, so I'm out of here. And like with us, we never got overtime paid, but we stayed because that was part of the job, you know what I'm saying? And so it's all these challenges where today's society is very different to our society. In the old times, we didn't even have to get paid to work like dogs. You know what I'm saying? Just as long as we had a job, we were happy. But now today's society is like, I went to art school for a whole, like 1 year, not even 3 years, whatever they did, you know, and I'm an art director, and I can come here and I can take over. So I was given the position to run this thing. They fired the whole design team, got me to run it, which was already very scary. But now I got this junior coming in, and she wants to be an art director, and she hasn't even worked. She doesn't even know how to do it. So I said to her, cool, you start, okay, you're an art director, right? You're not taking any instructions. I said, well, here is a brief, go do the job. And the person came back afterwards with a tail between her legs. No, she doesn't know how to do this. So I'm like, well, I thought you're an art director. You know, you should be doing this. But the thing is, how do you deal with the emotional, the mental, and then the entitlement?
Okay. what you're trying to do is trying to find a way to change the millennials. If you find a way, I think you'll make mega millions. But yes, it is one of the big challenges that are out there. And this is where ADKAR, if you take the ADKAR, if you look at the process, Steve is recording what we've done today. So if you take that entire process and you look at the individuals, listen to the individuals, listen to where they're struggling, listen to their desire of where they want to be, dangle that carrot that it's possible for them to get there. But sometimes if you've got several people on your teams that are not towing line, you've literally, in the worst case, you've got to take it to where, if I can't change the person, I'm going to change the person. So if I can't change your individual approach to doing things, I'm going to find somebody that will be able to do the job. And very often, when you take a person out, you could find that you've got junior leaders that are not performing well, but you've got a senior leader who's also not performing well, but they're managing to slide by because they're finding their ability to work around what you're wanting them to do. And that's the person you change. That's the person that sends a message down the ranks. You know what, guys, if we don't toe line, we could end up in that problem. And I say that from with a very large organization with a 400 staff operation, where the guys were battling. They were really battling to get team performance within their teams. They had an operations manager who really knew his job. He was brilliant at his hands-on job himself, operationally on the ground. But as a leader, he had an autocratic side. He had an autocratic approach to stuff, which actually then became disruptive with the teams below him not coming forward, or would stand back and wait for him to instruct rather than realize that every individual has a thought process, and they knew they weren't being listened to.
Sorry. So I just wanted to ask you, David, my question is actually, are you able to have a relationship, like in terms of a very close relationship with your employees? And when I mean close, like still get involved in all their like personal issues. Because,
okay.
you know, people always say, you know, and because do you separate business from that? Do you try and do that? Or do you, because I'm a kind of person, I'm just so like relationship orientated that for me,
that's great.
more important than the business even is relationships. You know what I'm saying?
That's great. Okay. Can I take it back then to that sub-lieutenant that I referenced earlier? You got to look back. This goes back into the 1970s, the late 1970s, where leadership was still extremely autocratic back then. You know, if you came out as a military officer in an army that was fighting a war, the top leadership's attitude is, you're the leader, you tell them what to do, and they do it. Whereas this guy was way before his time as a leader. And he came in there and yes, he was trained as an officer. He'd done his officer's course. He's your director that you've got right now that wants to be a director but doesn't know how to be a director. Okay, so they've got the skills, they've got the work set that they need. And he had all of that. But he also, his troops that he inherited, that he came in with, had all been operational. They had all worked at ground level, and he acknowledged that. And he said to them, guys, I'm going to lead. I need to lead. I need to take you guys into the action area. But you guys have been there. You've done it. I need to know what you think. This is the plan. This is the job. This is the operation we've been given. What do you guys feel? And his guys on the ground would then share their knowledge, quite stunned, quite taken. No leader had ever done this with them. And they would then give their thought process. He would take their thought process and he would then put the plan together. And he would say, right, guys, this is what we're going to do. The buck stopped with him, which made him an excellent leader because the buck now stopped with him. He was making a decision based on their experience. That same officer would also go when the guys were off duty, and he would go and sit and he would have a drink with them and he would chat to them and he would say to them, how's things at home? How's your mom doing? Is she better? Is she... He was showing an interest in his individuals. The result came out at the end of the day where when something had to be done, he had to say, hey guys, cut the crap. We got a job to do. This is how we're going to do it. We do it together as a team, because if you don't do it, you're going to die. Somebody's going to die. So it was a really tough environment. It was a tough call. But as a leader, he brought out a leadership style way before his time. His troops were his buddies, but at the end of the day, they had the highest success rate. So you being a buddy with your staff is no problem. But it's going to be up to you as the leader at times to actually say, guys, that's great, that's brilliant, but now we have the task to do. This is the timeline in which we need to do it, and we need to get it done. If you can't do it, I like you, you're my buddy, but maybe you're the wrong person for the job.
That's a matter of discipline. And I think that is something that we often leave out of relationships because we want to be nice to people, and discipline is not always nice. But I think if the lines are drawn right from the start, then relationships will form according to those lines, and then familiarity and all these things will not become a problem.
I just find, Steve, that sometimes, you know, what happens is you get very close to people, then they know that they've got your, like, you know, that they've got your heart, or whatever you want to call it, you know, and then what they do is they hear you say, stop, you know, we need to get this done, but then they don't, because they think, you know, oh, you know, we buddies, she's never going to do anything about it. Then you lay down the ground, because I've seen that even with relationships and friendships, that you've explained to people how you feel about things, but they still try, you know, like carry on trying to drum a, I want this, or I want this, and like you find yourself the third time going, okay, I don't understand why I'm having this conversation for the third time with you. I do not want to do this like this. And I think it's great what you said, because at the end of the day, it is just saying, okay, I am your buddy, I'm here for you, I care for you, but this is a job. We need to do it. And putting buddies aside, if you can't do the job, then maybe you need to go, which is what I did actually. But, you know, we're still friends, thank God. That's how good, you know, it was done as well. It was done. But it's just, I wanted to know if it was healthy to have such close relationships with the people you work with.
Oh, for sure.
Sheila?
All you do not allow contempt to come in, and contempt comes in when you do make a direct instruction and somebody goes against it, that direct instruction, and you let it ride. Then you start to get a contempt factor come in. And once, you know, there's that old saying where the old leadership used to say, familiarity breeds contempt. Yes, you can be familiar, but there's got to be a time when you say, the buck stops with me. Guys, this is the decision, and that's how it's going to go. And when they don't go, there must be consequence. If you go back to, in fact, I can maybe through Steve let you guys have a hard copy of this, because it again needs that reinforcement of the fact that you need to drive consequence. Contempt happens when there isn't consequence. When they know that if they push it past the line you've drawn in the sand, there's going to be consequence. We see it with world leaders. We see it with world leaders who say, if such and such doesn't happen, then this will happen. And then they get pushed, and then they say, well, okay, we'll compromise. We're seeing it within current leadership within the ANC government and the infighting that they've got. But then if I give you an example of who do many of the world kick against? They kick against the Israelis. But if the Israelis draw a line in the sand and say, don't cross it, you know, don't cross it. I don't know if that's a good example for you, but that probably makes sense for you, Sheila.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. Very helpful.
I was going to ask you the question, how did you handle that? Or was that a problem until you left? You know, using the telephone while, you know, which she must obviously knew you were annoyed about as the manager, how did you actually handle that? You know, because I was going to bring in the word communication. You know, leaders and managers often have to make some almost unhappy or, you know, decisions that they're not happy with because of the relationship. But I think you've got to make a decision then between what is good for the business and the company and what is good for the individual. And if it's reflecting on your management style, I would have taken that person aside. Like I had a guy, and I'll just give you an example, a quick one. Jack Vic Cole, he was about 6'2", twice my size. I was his foreman, and everybody was afraid of him because he was an aggressive, but he used, at lunchtime, he'd duck across to the Hotel Elizabeth, come back sozzled, and he was working a very, you know, a dangerous machine. In those days, we were working with molten lead. And I called him aside, and everybody watched me because I had my office with glass windows where I could look out onto the factory floor. And they said, everybody was waiting for this guy to punch me. And I sat him down and I said, Vic, I said, you know, there's a thing called the Health and Safety Act, and you are working a dangerous machine under the influence of alcohol. Do you understand what the consequences for you, for me, and for the company will be if you get your hand or you get burnt or you get injured with this machine? You know, I changed that guy around. He came out there. He never went for a drink afterwards. And it was purely just communicating his responsibility, not my responsibility, his responsibility to his team and everybody else. So I just give you that as an example. So it's a lot is about how you communicate, not what you communicate. And I think that's where your friendship was maybe taking precedence over your leadership role.
George, you know what the problem is? We weren't even friends. This is my problem. I make friends too easily. And because I'm a very open person, like I'm a book, like you can read me right away. When I'm happy, I'm happy. When I'm not happy, like a very open person. So these were people, I mean, the one time, I mean, I literally went to freelance in a place just for 3 weeks. They fired the whole design studio, made me run it on my own. And I'm like, you're crazy. I've never done this. What is going on with you? And then these people came on and I care about people. Do you understand? So I don't want to be this policeman who's telling people what to do. You know, we were all thrown off the deep end, basically. And we had to swim. But my thing is I get too close to people. I care too much about what's going on in their personal. I mean, her husband was on drugs. Not this one I'm talking about, because I'm talking about different situations. The one situation was I was running a design studio that I went to freelance at. And this last one that I'm telling you about is my own business, where I had too much work. I was overloaded. And I employed people to help me, or I freelance to friends, but the weirdest thing is that every single person that has worked under me or with me, I'm friends with every single one of them till this day. So it just shows you we're not enemies. We didn't talk about it. It was just like my question to David was just, is it healthy? Because in a way, it is quite touchy. You know, it's quite difficult because when you're not so close to people, you're able to say, hey, just get to work now, you know, whatever. But when you start getting involved in their personal life and everything they're going through and whatever, it's so hard to say, listen, I've had this conversation with you 3 times, please just put it away or whatever. You know, to the point where her mother actually phoned me and said, how's it going there? And so I said, you know, if I have to be honest with you, you know, she's lovely and I love her and whatever, but yeah, I've got this issue with this phone, you know. And her mother gave her a good ranting, you know, and so she came back.
Sheila, can I disrupt you there? If you listen to what George said,
I
think what George said has a lot of value there, is where make people say to, when somebody does something and it's not getting through, ask them the question. Say to them, now tell me what you are doing, what do you believe is the consequence for the company? If we allowed everybody to do what you are doing, can you see what the consequence would be for the company or for you as an individual? Reverse the role sometimes. Say to them, okay, if you were in my position and I was doing what you're doing, based on the explanation you've just given to me for consequence on company, what would you do? And I
did do that to her. I did do that to her, actually, funny enough, Dave.
If she didn't hear you on that basis, then you've got to say to her, you're actually not remembering your own consequences.
It's an hourly thing. Like I was telling you earlier on, I did say to her, you know, we're charging people by the hour. And imagine you're paying somebody money out of your pocket, and you're hoping that person is diligent and working through that hour, and they're playing along, and then you're just paying their money for nothing. You know what I'm saying? Nobody wants to pay for design. You know, so whatever hour you have to make sure that they got their full money's worth for that hour.
Value for money. Yeah.
But I get it.
But that's why it's critical to get them, rather than you tell the person what they're doing wrong. People don't listen when you tell them. Get them to tell you what the consequences are of them wasting time. And very often that'll drill the penny home, but at the same time, it then gives you the next time around you see them, you say, you're actually not listening to your own words that you made. So now you're putting me in a tough situation, because we might need to go the discipline route. You can still be the person's buddy, but at the same time, they've also got to know that, as with the subby, at the end of the day, his instruction to his guys was, once we're out there, once we're in the battlefield, you do as I tell you, because if you don't, in that case, not people are going to get into trouble, people could die. Yes. And it's a critical leadership factor. Jocko Willink's books, it's worth looking for, because people in a leadership role, if they read his books, his leadership, and when you look at him, he's not the kind of guy that when you first look at him or meet him, you think, oh my God, what is this guy going to put across to me? He's built like a rough and tough individual. He looks rough, he looks tough, he's huge, he's powerful. But his actual leadership style gets his guys to like him. There's no harm, there's no problem in that. But his books are worth reading.
What's it, Jocko? What? Sorry, Jocko?
Jocko Willink. He's written several books on operational leadership, but how he takes, what he does is he gives the military example, and then he brings the example into the working business world. And I do. It's just, maybe it's me, it's my leadership style, but I do believe that the military style, in a military environment, you've got to have discipline. And right now, with the Americans or whoever that are out there having a scrap at the moment, guess what? They've also got the millennials. They've got these little buggers that come in there. I know the second in command of the Canadian Air Force, and he says these guys come out of military school. They want to take a command. They want command of a section. And he said, that's okay. That's their goal. That's where they want to be. But then you've got to ask them, are the choices that they are making going to take them to where they want to be, or are they going to take them away? Very simple. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm saying to you, there's where you want to be. Is the choice going there, or is the choice going there? If the choice is taking you away, why do it?
Awesome. Thank you.
Makes sense.
Yes, absolutely.
This was good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Guys,
thank you.
I think this is it for today. 3 sessions. The first one, but you done it. Bye, donkey. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Dad.
Only a pleasure, guys.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
If there's any area where we can talk, where we can, somebody wants to talk on that sort of leadership style of things, we've turned guys into leaders that everybody thought was a rebel.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, David.
Pleasure, guys.
Bye.
Wish you all have a good day. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye.